Hi, my name is Stephanie Marquis, and this is my author analysis, if you will, the recording. I picked Roald Dahl. He actually wasn't an author I was previously familiar with. I was familiar with his works, but just not that he had done them personally. But I wanted to do a better-known author, a better-known children's author, just because I think those people are more interesting to learn about. Sorry about that. And I also wanted to pick one that was no longer alive, just because I think that, again, like, they're more interesting. You get an overall better picture of their lives after they're over. I mean, that sounds harsh, but it is what it is. Roald was born on September 19th, 1916, in Llandaff, Cardiff. He didn't actually attend college. Instead, he went to work with Shell Petroleum, and he worked there until he joined the Air Force as a fight pilot during World War II. So, I had to infer a little bit, but it didn't really strike me that he had a strong author background like as a child. I'm sure he probably wrote here and there, or maybe consistently, but it didn't mention anything until he was out of the Air Force. He did have 2 marriages throughout his life. His first marriage, he had 5 children. And then it looks like the first book he ever published was The Gremlins in 1943. And so when I started looking at the books that he had done and like the works he'd completed, I was pretty surprised. I was like, oh, no wonder he's so familiar. He's done quite a bit. I think there were, like, all in all, I actually wrote it on here. He wrote 35 stories, including The Gremlins. He helped or wrote 5 screenplays, and then he helped co-write 7 other pieces of works. So, like, he was in those other works. He did pass away November 23rd, 1990, and he died due to a blood disease. He was pretty old at that point, so, it's not too surprising. Some of his more notable works that you or I would have probably heard would be The Gremlins, of course, James and the Giant Peach, which I'm going to read a little bit for you, Charlie and the Chocolate Factory, Fantastic Mr. Fox, My Uncle Oswald, The BFG, Matilda, The Minpins, the screenplay of Chitty Chitty Bang Bang, and the screenplay of Willy Wonka and the Chocolate Factory. The biggest one that stood out for me was, of course, Charlie and the Chocolate Factory. Right away I was like, oh, but James and the Giant Peach, I know that one as well, and then Matilda, I love. The BFG, of course. I haven't actually ever, watched it or read it, but I know that there's a movie, and it just came out not too long ago. So things are still being commemorated in his from what he wrote. Not too long ago. I guess it was probably like 5 years ago at this point or so. I should have looked up the time, but we just remade Willy Wonka and the Chocolate Factory with Johnny Depp. So things are still, he's a classic, kind of on the level of Dr. Seuss with that kind of stuff. Like I said, James and the Giant Peach is what I'm going to read. It's a chapter book. It's not too bad, but it's 126 pages, so I'm not going to read it all to you. Can't make that under 10 minutes. But I am going to read an excerpt in it. I chose the part where the centipede broke into song, just because I think it's really interesting and it definitely shows his writing style, which I'll kind of talk about too. Okay. Whereupon, the centipede, with his mouth full of peach and with juice running down all over his chin, suddenly burst into song. I've eaten many strange and scrumptious dishes in my time, like jellied gnats and dandy prats and earwigs cooked in slime, and nice with rice, they're really nice when roasted in their prime, but don't forget to sprinkle them with just a pinch of grime. I've eaten fresh mud burgers by the greatest cooks there are, and scrambled dregs and stink bugs' eggs, and hornets stewed in tar, and pails of snails and lizard tails and beetles by the jar. A beetle's improved by just a splash of vinegar. I often eat boiled slobbages. They're grand when served beside minced doodlebugs and curried slugs. And have you ever tried mosquitoes' toes and womp fish roes? most delicately fried. The only trouble is they disagree with my inside. I'm mad for crispy wasp stains on a piece of buttered toast, and pickled spines of porcupines, and then a gorgeous roast of dragon's flesh. Well, hun, not fresh, it costs $1 at most, and comes to you in barrels if you order it by post. I crave the tasty tentacles of octopi for tea. I like hot dogs, I love hot frogs, and surely you'll agree. A plate of soil with Injun's oil, a super recipe. I hardly need to mention that it's practically free. For dinner on my birthday, shall I tell you what I chose? Hot noodles made from poodles on a slice of garden hose. And a rather smelly jelly made of armadillo's toes. The jelly's delicious, but you have to hold your nose. Now comes, the centipede declared, the burden of my speech. These foods are rare beyond compare, some are right out of reach, but there's no doubt I'd go without 1,000,000 plates of each for one small mite, one tiny bite of this fantastic peach. I'm not gonna break out in song. I don't know the tune. But I love that. Like, his writing's so fun. It's a lot like Dr. Seuss. His writing style, it changed and it adapted with what he wrote, but he preferred to write with like a humorous style. He also enjoyed writing suspenseful works, and suspensefully humorous too. He wrote around 4 hours every day. Just some interesting facts about him. I think it said, the article said he wrote from 10 a.m. to 12 p.m. and then 4 to 6. I know I've read of other authors writing that much, and I just can't imagine it. But he did, and he preferred it that way. And he never learned to type. He never typed out his rough drafts or his final drafts or anything. Those would, like, the publication would. He preferred to write all of his works in pencil, versus on a typewriter. He had like a yellow legal pad and a pencil. So I thought that was interesting, especially as he got older, because 1990 is when he died, and I mean, there were computers, and it was getting fairly modern. My interactive learning experience I would do with this, as a follow-up, is I would just have the children pick out one of the books from Roald Dahl that speaks to them or that they especially like. And I'd have them write an analysis of sorts about the book. I'd have them read aloud an excerpt from the book, kind of like I did, to the class, and explain why they chose this one to do their analysis over and what the book means to them. I've really enjoyed this class, and thank you.